In the previous video, we automated the creation of this nicely detailed stone portal without any manual sculpting at all. Now, we've taken it a step further by adding a procedural moss effect that brings an amazing level of detail, improves the visual quality, and gives you a fully reactive and adaptable setup, so you can tweak the model, reuse the effect on other assets, and have everything update automatically. I will guide you through the full process to create this very cool effect, so let's get started. I start from the blockout mesh with the edge detail. I don't use the fully detailed object because I need some separation between the shape to allow the moss to get much more inside the gaps between the stones. So to do it, I use my base mesh and I use a peak and to push the normals of the stones to make them smaller, basically. And it's a bunch of nodes, but actually everything is quite simple. This is very simple nodes. There is no very complicated stuff here. So I have basically two separated graphs, one for the top moss and one for the top moss here I have on the top. So basically this is the moss here and the moss on the bottom. This is two separated graphs. So I will show you how it works. Here I start with a remesh and then add a slight peak to basically make it inward. I usually create a mask using the CD attribute to define where a moss should be placed. And I start with a top-down gradient, then a second noise pattern on top of it to make it less even. Then basically I use an attribute wrangle to set the mask to the red channel of the CD attribute, just to allow the peak here. Use the mask in the peak just to inflate the base, because I want more moss on the base, so I inflate the base. The mesh will get outer and then cover the stone with moss. Then I use an ambient occlusion to mask the surface to keep the moss in the white areas, and then erase on the surface and combine the both with a color blend node to get the first mask. And then I add a second mask on the bottom and mix them together to have a bit. Here you can see that the stones on the bottom are not covered, and with this new mask I add more white values on the bottom, so I will have more moss. Then I use the blast, basically to blast every point under a certain threshold to define the first blockout mesh where I will get the moss. I want the border to be less regular, so I will use a distance from border to add some gradient from the border. Then I multiply a noise to basically add some values to the border, and then delete with a different threshold to make something more natural in the shape. Here, if I activate or deactivate, you can see that we get more holes on the borders, and it makes the shape more natural, less blocky. And then we just thicken and remesh, and we have the base mesh for the moss. For the top part, I just delete with normal, so I can play with the spread angle to have more or less moss. I remesh to get a bit more density, and same trick as the other side of the graph. I just use a border, then add a noise and delete in a certain threshold to get this effect on the borders, and then thicken and remesh as well to get the final effect. Then I merge all together. I merge the two parts, then remesh everything to get more details, and then I use a first mountain node to basically add some noise to the surface to build the moss shape. Then I remesh it to increase the second time the mesh resolution, and add a last noise effect on top of it. So now to finish it, we just need to here add some color, a base color, and then add on top of it a gradient. We just use a gradient with noise with an overlay noise to add some variation in the values. We will simply use a clean node to remove all the isolated points that we don't want. Just merge with the object with the stone portal to check. Here obviously I get the final result, but I tweaked the parameters, tweaked the ambient occlusion and all the stuff to get this result. Because you can play with everything to get more moss or less moss if you want. And here the final result. The final result is pretty cool. The trick is not very high resolution. I think we could add some extra geometry on top of it if we really want to have very high detail. But from a viewer distance, it's cool. And for a gaming asset or this kind of stuff, or even cinematic asset, it's really cool. So if you have any question, drop a comment below. I will be happy to help you if I can. And if you liked it, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned, because in the next one I will cover how to grow some ivys on this stone portal with all the roots, the leaves. So stay tuned for the next one. Bye bye.